Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/Malicious Compliance. In today's episode, yell at me for delivering. Well, time to get some exercise. I want a doctor to place my 4. Stubborn DIYer pays double the price for his own mistake. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Yell at me for delivering. Well, time to get some exercise. Some years ago, I was driving pick-ups and deliveries, P&D, for a trucking company in Denmark. P&D is the part of the transport chain where you usually deliver small quantities to multiple customers on a route, kind of like UPS or FedEx, but in semis or rigid/box trucks. It was nearing the end of the day and I had to deliver a trampoline to a residential area, mind you this in EU, so things may be a bit different than in the US regarding rules and regulations. It was a fairly new area with plenty of space, but I had to reverse in cause there was no way of turning around. But no problem, the road was wide and so were the corners I had to go around. I put my semi in reverse and started going backwards, and of course I was delivering to the last house on the street. Now the road climbed a bit and was about 600 or 700 meters long, but it all went fine. When I finally got to the end of the road and got out of my truck to unload this trampoline, some guy was already standing behind my truck and started yelling and swearing at me. I was the biggest idiot on this earth. How the hell could I even think of going in there with a semi? I could have run over all the kids in the neighborhood. No one was out. I had absolutely no valid reason for being there and could get the hell out of there right away. Instead of starting an argument with person, I calmly asked him where he lived. He pointed at the house and said number 74, and lo and behold, where was I delivering? You guessed it, number 74. So I, again very calmly, told this man. Well, in that case I have a trampoline for you. Oh, the man said, well, I would like if you could. But I interrupted, since I have no business being in here with a semi, I will be waiting for you at the end of the road, and pointed to the direction I just came from. Mind you, this is the big model weighing about 130 pounds, so you might want to bring a wheelbarrow. The joy it was seeing him coming all the way down the road with his wheelbarrow. And then trying to get this 130-pound trampoline up in the wheelbarrow and starting his long heavy walk 700 meters up to his house again. Priceless. I want a doctor to place my 4. This story takes place a few years back when I was doing a clinical rotation in phlebotomy for my degree in medical laboratory science. I was placed in the ED, emergency department, of a local hospital, practicing poking patients and drawing their blood. All the staff knew that my snow white scrubs meant I was a student, but some patients took them to mean I was a physician. One night I happened to walk by an exam room where an altercation was taking place between a patient I will call Mr. Smith and a very patient RN, registered nurse. Altercations were a fairly common occurrence in the ED, but I was still pretty green, so it was hard not to stop and listen in. Nurse, I've been doing this for 30 years, Mr. Smith, I can assure you dash. Patient, I don't care how long you've been doing this, I want a doctor to place my 4. Nurse, Mr. Smith, if you hold still I promise I'll have it in a flash. You'll hardly feel a thing. Patient, are you deaf or just stupid? I want. At this point, the man catches sight of me loitering in the hallway. I want her to place my 4. Me, flabbergasted, but I can't thread IVs. I only know how to draw blood. Nurse, sir, she's just a student. This affront seemed to put the patient into overdrive and he began slamming his fist on the bed rail, screaming for a doctor. The nurse quietly took me aside and asked me to go fetch one of the physicians on duty. I ran to get the kindest one, as I was afraid of getting snapped at by the other doctors working that night. I'll call him Dr. Anderson. Dr. Anderson patiently listened to my explanation, wordlessly grabbed an 4 kit out of the cupboard, and followed me to the patient's room. We could hear the patient still throwing his tantrum as we walked down the hall. As soon as Dr. Anderson stepped into the room in his white coat, the patient switched it off like a light and breathed a heavy sigh of relief. Patient, finally. With a smug smile at his nurse. Dr. Anderson, with a big friendly smile, "Hello, Mr. Smith. I hear you want a doctor to place your four. Well, I haven't done this since medical school, so that's, 25 years ago now? I might be a little rusty, but I'm happy to give it a shot. Nurse, will you please position the patient's head? I'm going for the jugular." Suddenly the patient decided he didn't want a doctor to place his four after all, and the nurse with 30 years experience placing IVs would do just fine. Stubborn DIYer pays double the price for his own mistake. I worked at a hardware store where I handled and sold heavier items such as wood, stone tiles, metal sheet and the like. When someone buys wooden sheets, beams or anything wood, we would offer them a free sawing service where we cut the materials to their specified dimensions. But whether you need a tiny piece of the whole sheet, the price stays the same. Most people want just a few clean cuts, which took a minute at most. Others wrote a short list of dimensions for me to cut. Sometimes it was a puzzle to get the most pieces out of the least wooden sheets. Better to give the customer the most bang for their buck than to create unnecessary waste material. That is if they don't order me around for no good use. There was this old man, who came prepared with a schematic drawing. Often great, but not if the dimensions are bad. Each wooden sheet was exactly 8 by 4 feet, 2.5 by 1.25 meters, and the old man had fit his needed dimensions exactly within the length of the sheet. In theory, it makes sense. But in practice, for each cut I make, 1/8th of an inch, 3 millimeters, is sawed away. This happened 6 years ago, so the conversation is not verbatim. Me, I see that all the pieces amount to exactly 8 feet in length. We need to take into account 1/8 of an inch for each cut I make, so I can't cut this many pieces from one sheet. What do you mean? Can't you just cut exactly as I have drawn? Me, yes, but then you'll miss the last piece. But I think I can saw all the pieces from one sheet by sawing the big pieces first and the smaller pieces last. Nonsense, just saw as I've drawn. It works out to exactly this many pieces. Me, but then you'll need another sheet. Each cut removes 1/8th, he cuts me off. No it doesn't. Just do your job already. The real conversation was longer, and I was fed up with his stubbornness, so I placed the sheet on the workbench and started sawing. There were quite a few thin pieces, so also a lot of times 1/8 of an inch. And guess what, the last piece was much too small. Why is that last piece so small? Me, explains the 1/8 inch again, if you want this another piece, you'll need to get a second sheet. I don't know why, but sometimes people need to see the bad result before they realize that they made a mistake. He proceeded to tell me I didn't explain it well enough the first time, but then reminded him that I should just do my job already, as said. Without saying much else, went to grab another sheet for me to cut the last piece. Most people give us the unused, waste, materials, but took the nearly full-sized sheet with him. Luckily most other people do understand that you don't split wood, but rather remove a thin slice to create two pieces. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.